Donald Trump has openly dangled the threat of a US strike on Venezuela, escalating a volatile standoff. Nicolás Maduro accuses Washington of engineering violent regime change, while Venezuela's defense chief warns that even Trinidad will face legitimate defense if it aids a US assault. With naval skirmishes, drug war raids and Caribbean neighbours arming for fallout, the region teeters on the edge of a US-Venezuela confrontation that could engulf the hemisphere. Amid soaring tensions between the US and Venezuela, President Donald Trump declined to rule out the possibility of ousting Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro. Trump further accused the Maduro government of sending drug dealers and cartels to the USA.
Venezuela is sending us their gang members, their drug dealers, and drugs. It's not acceptable. What happens is not an option or not option. We had an election that was wrong. It was almost as corrupt as our election in 2020. You know that? You know what I'm talking about? I wouldn't say theirs was much more corrupt, but it was certainly corrupt, but ours was corrupt also.
Trump has previously downplayed the possibility of regime change in Venezuela, but has long been clear in his disdain for Maduro. Washington and Caracas do not have formal diplomatic relations. Earlier on September 5th, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro called on the United States to abandon what he described as plans for violent regime change in his country and across Latin America. Despite the growing tensions, Maduro struck a conciliatory tone towards Trump.
The government of the United States should abandon its plan of violent regime change in Venezuela and in all of Latin America and the Caribbean, and respect sovereignty, the right to peace, to independence. We have had differences, but none of the differences we have had and continue to have could lead to a high-impact military conflict or violence in South America and our America. There is no justification for it. It is not true, I say to the people of the United States. It was not true that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. What they are saying about Venezuela is not true. It is not true. It is a dead end they are getting themselves into. Venezuela has always been willing to talk, but just as we are willing to talk, we demand respect for our country, for our people.
The escalating rhetoric follows Trump's demonstration of his new approach to the drug war with a US military strike on September 2nd that killed 11 people and sank a Venezuelan boat allegedly transporting narcotics. According to CNN, the Trump administration is now weighing options for further strikes, potentially targeting suspected drug cartel operations inside Venezuela. Venezuela has warned neighbouring Trinidad of retaliation after a US Navy destroyer clash in Caribbean waters. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino declared any attack from Trinidad's territory would be met with force, calling it legitimate defense. He also accused the US of deploying spy planes and intercepting a Venezuelan tuna boat near La Blanquilla Island on September 13th. 18 armed men allegedly boarded and deceived fishermen, sparking outrage in Caracas.
To those who sent a written statement from the United States, I am referring to the governments of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, who have played along. I say to you, well, if they attack from your territory, you will also receive a response, and that is legitimate defense.
Earlier in August, Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar had assured Guyana that Trinidad and Tobago will stand firmly at its side in the event of any Venezuelan aggression, declaring her government's readiness to allow US forces access through Trinidadian territory should the need arise. According to Persad-Bissessar, the region faces a dangerous convergence of threats, including drug trafficking, human smuggling, illegal arms flows, and rising gang violence. These, she warned, have enabled powerful cartels to entrench themselves at the highest levels of politics, business, banking, and the media across several Caribbean states. For Trinidad and Tobago, where violent crime has spiked dramatically in recent years, the Prime Minister said aligning with US operations is not only about safeguarding Guyana's sovereignty, but also about addressing her own nation's vulnerability to transnational crime. Meanwhile, China on September 15th criticised the deployment of the US military in waters near Venezuela, stressing it seriously undermines regional peace, and warned Washington against any interference in the internal affairs of the Latin American nation.
The actions of the US seriously undermine peace and security of the region, seriously infringe upon the security, sovereignty, and legitimate rights and interests of other countries, seriously violate international law. China has also always upheld to enhance international cooperation, to crack down on trans-border crimes. We oppose unliteral use of force. We oppose any foreign forces to interfere in the internal affairs of Venezuela under any pretext.
Meanwhile, Venezuela's Chavista leadership is gripped by mounting fear of a US attack as Washington's naval buildup near its waters intensifies. What began as speculation that the deployment was a negotiating ploy has hardened into suspicion of an imminent invasion. A senior official close to President Nicolás Maduro told El País,
All that's left is for them to shoot at the buildings we're sitting in.
Maduro and his powerful lieutenant, Diosdado Cabello, veteran of Hugo Chávez's failed 1992 coup, have turned Venezuela into a fortified garrison state. The El País reported that the government, in any case, doesn't trust its internal solidity and is conducting constant investigations among its troops. The regime's number 2, Diosdado Cabello, shows up for televised events wearing a cap that reads, "Doubting is treason," just in case anyone had any doubts underscoring the climate of paranoia. Maduro, once dismissed as an unschooled bus driver, has entrenched himself as a hardline autocrat, only 18 months away from matching Chávez's years in power. Cabello and Maduro are risking everything in this gamble with the United States, even their survival. Although he doesn't come from a military background, the Venezuelan president has shown himself to be the commander-in-chief of a force willing to confront any armed aggression. He announced what he calls Operation Independence 200. Maduro urged a nationwide, popular military police fusion, calling on citizens to train with weapons in case of a US strike. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez vowed the armed forces and the people are ready to give our lives to repel any assault. The government accuses the US Navy of firing a missile that sank a Venezuelan boat, killing 11 civilians. Communications Minister Freddy Ñáñez at first suggested the video evidence was AI-generated. Cabello insists the deaths are real and demands answers from Washington. Behind the revolutionary bravado lies acute anxiety at Miraflores Palace. Maduro projects defiance. The people have someone to defend them, he declared to troops. But the danger, he knows, comes from the sea. For the embattled Chavistas, survival now hinges on military readiness, and their ability to rally a nation for what they fear could be a fight for its very existence.